friends, it's the final week of our Halloween series, and this week we have some really fun throwbacks to some of my favorite Halloween items that I actually made last year. First up, we have a vampire-inspired Lambeth cake. A Lambeth cake is simply a cake that has a lot of vintage piping techniques on it, and with this one I decided to do a 2-tier mini cake, and we have our cake completely covered in black buttercream. To start our piping, we're using a piping bag filled with black buttercream and fitted with a Wilton piping tip number 103. This is a petal tip, and we're going to use this one to do some ruffles along both our bottom and our top tiers. After deciding to add a double ruffle to the bottom tier, I also decided to add like a little tiny ruffle along the base of the cake board. Then I swapped out the piping tip for a Wilton 363 and piped a shell border along the bottom. I then used a piping bag filled with red buttercream and fitted with a Wilton tip number 21 to pipe shell borders along the top ruffle, the base of the top tier, and then a secondary shell border along the base of the bottom tier. Using the 363 piping tip and the black buttercream, we're adding a secondary shell border to the base of our top tier. Then we swap out the piping tip for Wilton tip number 2, and we're going to pipe along the top of our ruffles on the bottom tier using kind of like a pearl shell technique. Using a Wilton piping tip number 30, we're adding some tall black buttercream dollops to the top of our cake, and then using a Wilton piping tip number 3 and some red buttercream, we're going to add some hearts as well as some dots around the top tier and bottom tier. After adding some red buttercream dollops to the top center of our cake and doing a very generous spritz of edible glitter spray, our cake is complete. I don't do the vintage piping cakes often, so of course I'm not perfect, but it is a lot of fun to practice different piping techniques on these cakes, and I think this one turned out pretty cool. But what do you think? Make sure to let me know in the comments, and of course stay tuned for more Halloween fun this week.